Section 1, Module 3. Section 1, Module 3. Health, safety and legal aspects. So in this module, the different legal aspects we'll cover are wildlife. So Wildlife Countryside Act 1981. Bird Control, Pests Act 1954, Food Safety 1990, Food Hygiene Regulations 2006, Food and Environment Protection Act 1985, Control of Pesticides Regulations 1986. So the sections are Wildlife and Countryside Act, Bird Control, Pests Act, Food Safety, Food Hygiene, Food and Environment Protection, Control of Pesticides Regulations. So first of all, Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. This limits the action you can take. For example, when it comes to taking animals, hunting, killing or disturbing them. For example, you're not allowed to disturb a place that animals use for shelter or protection. So again, it's covering taking, hurting, killing or disturbing animals. The Wildlife and Countryside Act covers protection of all bird species, the licenses that are used to control birds, now the licenses are general and class, the protection of key species like water voles or red squirrels or bats, you're not allowed to hunt them or kill them. Controls the methods that are allowed to be used. For example, you're not allowed to use crossbows or explosives. Prevents the re-release of a non-native species. For example, grey squirrels aren't native, so once they're captured, you're not allowed to release them. And stops live animal decoys. So again, this act covers the Wildlife and Countryside Act, the protection of all bird species, the licenses that are needed, general and class, the protection of species, of key species like water voles, red squirrels or bats, controls the methods that are allowed, so no crossbows or explosives, prevents the re-releasing of non-native animals like grey squirrels, and prohibits animal decoys or live animal decoys. On to bird control. So the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 makes all birds a protected species, and it's an offence to kill, injure or take them. It's also an offence to take, damage or destroy a nest or a nest that's being built. The exception to this is if they're causing a health risk. But if they are a health risk, then you couldn't just kill the birds, you'd need to get the correct licence to take care of them. So all birds are protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act, and it's illegal to take, damage or destroy a nest, or take, injure or kill them. But if they're becoming a pest and causing a public health risk, then you need the correct licence to deal with the issue. Licenses. If you're doing any work that involves disturbing, trapping or killing a protected species, then you would need an individual licence. So any work that involves a protected species, you need an individual licence. if you need to disturb or remove wildlife to prevent damage to agriculture, livestock or fisheries, protect the public health and safety, maintain or develop land, prevent disease, keep or re-release species not native to the UK, sell, own, exhibit or transport a protected species, again, you would need an individual licence. So again, if you're going to disturb, remove wildlife for these reasons: prevent damage to agriculture, livestock and fisheries, protect the public health and safety, maintain or develop land, prevent disease, keep or release species not native to the UK, sell, own, exhibit or transport a protected species, you would need the individual licence. Also, you need a licence to survey for the presence of wildlife on your land for science, educational research or conservation. Next section, Pest Act 1954. Pest Act 1954. This is specifically about rabbits and spring traps. So the small ground vermin order. It's an offence to cause unnecessary physical or mental suffering. Inspections on live traps have to take place within 24 hours. Food and drink have to be accessible for the animal. So, the small ground vermin order shows that it's an offence to cause unnecessary physical or mental suffering. Inspections have to take place within 24 hours of you laying the trap. And food and drink have to be accessible to an animal with a live trap. The Protection of Animals Act 1911 and 1927 says that poisoning should only be used for legitimate pest control reasons. So poisoning should only be used under the Protection of Animals Act for legitimate pest control reasons. Spring traps for hares and rabbits have to be checked at least once a day. So, and for other pests, it's just done at reasonable intervals. So, the Protection of Animals Act 1911-1927 says that poisoning can only be used for legitimate pest control. Spring traps for hares and rabbits have to be checked at least once a day. For other pests, it's at reasonable intervals. The Protection of Badgers Act 1992 stops the killing, injuring or capturing of them. Next section, Food Safety Act 1990. Health inspectors can give different notices to food establishments, to restaurants, to kitchens. For example, a health inspector can give an improvement notice. It means they have to control the pests and use preventative measures, for example, proofing entrances, windows, cleaning anything that's been dropped so they don't attract any more vermin. Prohibition notice. So if there's a risk of injury to health, for example an infestation, that could directly contaminate food surfaces and risk the public. So a prohibition notice. So if, for example, there's an issue where some kind of vermin or pest are almost in direct contact with contaminating food, then they'd get a prohibition notice. Customer protection. This stops food being sold that's unfit for human consumption. for example, if it's infested with mites or insects. So customer protection stops food being sold that's unfit for human consumption. Food safety. This allows governments to implement regulations of food to protect public safety. So food safety allows governments to implement regulations to control certain types of food and food products to protect public safety. So you're not allowed to eat, for example, shark or certain type of thing if they think it's got dangerous stuff in it. Due diligence. Anyone who's charged has to prove that they took all reasonable steps to avoid the problem. So, due diligence. Everyone who is charged has to prove that they took all reasonable steps to avoid any infestation or contamination. Training. Everyone who works in food must receive food hygiene training. So, again, the Food Safety Act 1990 says that health inspectors can give improvement notices, which means people have to control and put preventative measures in place, so proofing things or cleaning up things that have been dropped. Prohibition notice stops food being sold as unfit for human consumption. No, that's consumer protection. Consumer protection stops food being sold that's unfit for human consumption. Prohibition notice, if there's a risk of injury to health, for example, infestation that could directly contaminate food surfaces. The food safety allows governments to implement regulations on food products. Due diligence, anyone who is charged has to prove they took all reasonable steps. And if training, anyone who's working in food has to receive food hygiene training. Food hygiene regs, 2006. Food says that food premises should be designed and promote hygiene and prevent contamination. For example, sealing gaps around pipes. Windows should open outwards and have insect screens. Bin stalls should be designed to be able to be kept clean and pest free. So food hygiene regs, 2006, says that food premises should be designed to promote hygiene and prevent contamination. So food hygiene regs 2006, food premises designed to promote hygiene and prevent contamination. We can do this by sealing gaps, windows opening outwards, bin stalls being designed to be able to be kept clean. Adequate procedures must be in place to control pests. So, proofing entrances, insect screens, fly killers, stock rotation of dry goods, regular surveys by a competent person, and baiting with pesticides. So, adequate procedures must be in place to control pests. For example, you walk in to the rolling doors in the Bethel entrances and there's something to stop a slight lip possibly, or something to proof an entrance or a screen, window, proofing an entrance with a fly net on a window. Insect screens, you walk down and you see the fly killers on the wall. Rocky's in the back rotating, doing a stock rotation of the flour and the oats because it's dry goods. He then does a survey just to see if there's any possible issues. And we have baiting. There's bait boxes with pesticides in it. So proofing entrances, insect screens, fly killers, stock rotation of dry goods, regular survey by a competent person, baiting with pesticides. Public Health Act 1936. So, with insects and parasites, the Public Health Act 1936 allows local authorities to remove or destroy parasites or insects. So, if someone, for example, has an infestation and don't take steps to fix the problem and they've been warned, local authorities can have the work done and then charge the person who lived there or whose land it is. So again, the Public Health Act, Section 19 of the Public Health Act is about the disconnection of drains and sealing of disused drains. So Section 19 of the Public Health Act is about the disconnection of drains and sealing of disused drains. So 19 drains. 19 drains. 19 drains are on the wall. Section 29 is about demolition. So this notice, so Section 29 of the Public Health Act, can require the removal of materials or rubbish, disconnection of drains, sewers or water pipes, and then is about making good the ground that's been disturbed so it's not all lumpy and bumpy. So Section 29, you're removing 29 bits of rubble and rubbish and disconnecting drains, sewers or water pipes, and then making good the ground, and it takes 29 days to do all those things. 29th of October. On the 29th of October, you're removing drains and rubbish and rubble, water pipes, sewer pipes and drains. Buildings that have infestations can often be because of an uncapped pipe leading to a drain fly problem. Section 474 gives authorities the power to deal with doves, pigeons, starlings and sparrows in built-up areas. Section 74, so I don't know how to remember that. 74 pigeons,